Oh snap, we're back again for another live roundtable discussion. Tonight, whatever time it is that you're listening or watching this, we're going to discuss some casual commander. We're going to go into the nitty gritty of what casual commander really is and what it isn't. This is all sparked by a tweet that I did, I think, early this morning, as of this recording on December 1st, which is 24 days away from Christmas. Woo. Talking about how these 4 cards, if you're calling this casual, if you're playing these 4 cards in what you call casual EDH, you're doing it wrong. You're not playing casual. And that's Manic Crypt, Jeweled Lotus, Smothering Tithe, and Dockside Extortionist. Holy shit, did this tweet blow up. So many, we'll just say, takes on it. So I've brought with me some people to get into this here, and we're going to discuss casual commander here. And what is casual commander? Because this brought up like whole sorts of discussions here on what is casual and all that. And let's just get into it. Yo, Zuby naming casual cards. And I miss Zuby's sincere apology to Commander Tryhards. That's right. Before we start, I do have something I'd like to say. All right. Let me do basic YouTube apology. Let me look sad. This podcast can be found on the following on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, and Spotify. And you can find me on Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, all at Magic with Zuby. And if you want to help support the show, you can check out my sponsors, cardsphere.com. I'm wearing my hoodie because it's still cold in Florida again. And Alter Sleeves, you want to snazz up your deck, check out Alter Sleeves. Use coupon code Magic with Zuby. And cardsphere.com for all your Magic singles and sealed product. Boom. We're going to get into the roundtable here. And all right. Hello. Yo. All right. Yeah, none of you are doing cameras, so I'm not either. We're just going to keep it on here on just my face. And yo, Mnemonic Tutor, welcome. All right, so we've got with us Dougie Fresh, the freshest of wet lettuce champions. Say hi, Doug.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Yeah,
Sweet.
I'm excited for that. We're keeping this extra casual, no cameras or nothing.
Only me. We've also got Food Time Food.
Hello, I am Food in Time. Now, what's up? How's it going?
Oh, thanks again for joining, man.
Anytime.
And then we've got, last but certainly not least, Inu Snoozer.
The great Inu Snoozer has arrived.
Yes, if he suddenly starts yelling and cursing, that's because you might be playing League of Legends at the same time.
Currently not. My friends, AFK.
Oh, okay. All right, good. You want to watch out for oh fuck, what's that little squirrel's name? Timo. You got to watch out for Timo.
The literal devil? Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
I mean, they made him a devil skin, but anyways.
Oh, did they really?
His truth war.
Yeah, snap.
He looks very creepy when he recalls and does other stuff. It's very creepy.
Oh, dang. Dang, that's awesome. See, I need to get on League again. Oh my god, I've been itching so bad. But Final Fantasy 14, but we're not going to get into that because Food Time will get mad at me if I start talking about it. He'll just be like, ugh, I'm joking. I'm joking, man. But thank you for the follow, Mnemonic Tutor. Don't forget the Get Fresh crew. The Get Fresh crew. Is it like Subway or something? Am I missing something? They Get Fresh. Yeah, I don't know why why Food Time must hate 14 so much.
Dougie Fresh and the Get Fresh crew.
Oh, Dougie Fresh. Oh, okay. Thank you for the sub, Mnemonic Tutor. Dougie Fresh and okay. I gotcha. I'm down with the lingo with it. So let's just dive into it, folks. All right, casual commander. I guess let's go around the table here and sort of get everybody's idea of what casual commander is, right? Because I feel like there's a lot of people's definitions of it are very different. It varies. So let's start with Doug.
How to put this? I guess I would say that I consider myself probably one of the more casual commander players specifically at this round table, even though I'm pretty competitive with other formats. To me, casual commander is just throwing together a deck with whatever, random pile of cards you happen to have handy, and most of the stuff I play, it's just not really combo oriented, or there's not that I, like I was saying, I play some cards that are probably pretty powerful in certain situations. Like I've got one of those jeweled lotuses I got from a random pack one time, so sure, I throw it in the deck, but it doesn't enable me to really ramp out anything special. I mean, usually I'm playing, except for when I play Omnath, I guess, but even then, it doesn't ramp out Omnath.
Yeah.
But it's just to me, it's casual is just you've got some cards, you throw them out, you play. There's nothing to I don't know, nothing to. I don't necessarily. I know people use like the power level thing, like 1 to 10 or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But if we're just saying like casual versus serious, to me, casual is the. I didn't go online and find what was that website that tells you all the cards people play in each commander or whatever.
EDH Rec.
Yeah, I didn't use EDH Rec. I just, I said, oh, cool, I've got this legendary card that I like, and I'm gonna throw a bunch of other cards in with it that,
Okay.
seem to have, they can have synergy, but it's just simple.
Okay, so for you, it's just more of a pile of cards that you just sort of have laying around, since you don't take it. Because from what I understand, you only have like a few decks. You have, 2 decks, I think?
Right, yeah, I don't,
Yeah.
I don't have a huge collection. I don't have like a big focus on commander decks. I know some players, they like to have, 20 different decks, one for
Food
each
time.
color combination, all that, which is totally cool. I don't have anything against it, but
Yeah.
when I go into a commander game, I usually go into it not expecting to necessarily win. I usually go into it just kind of hoping that I'll be ignored and not seen as a threat long enough to maybe like
I have
somehow
that with some of
sneak
my
out a
decks,
win.
yeah.
That's like most of my stuff, because most of my decks don't have some kind of like big end game plan either. It's not like I'm gonna get these spells out and create a loop where I can recycle my spells every turn, or play infinite tokens, or which is
Okay.
that stuff's cool. I think it's cool to see it happen in Commander, but I don't know. I guess I'm more like I don't want to say necessarily a Timmy commander, but like just I tend to just be like, well, I'm playing this legendary that says Cascade, so I'm just gonna play these other cards that say Cascade and
Yeah,
hope something
yeah.
cool happens.
All right, food time. What about you?
Okay, so I obviously have a lot of decks, and I wouldn't call myself necessarily a casual player, although I have casual decks. So, to me, a casual player is one of my friends. He doesn't play a lot of Magic, right? He's recently started getting into it, and he'll either have a pre-con deck, which is pretty casual, or he'll buy a box of whatever the latest set is. Brilliant Vampires, so he bought, I think, like a box and a collector's box of Crimson Vow, and he'll build a deck out of that with a commander and a bunch of the set mechanic, and a Sol Ring and your usual cards. And he's pretty casual. He's not trying to infinite combo out. He's not trying to win on turn 5 or 6.
Yeah.
He's just gonna play the game, play the combat, and attack. And then there are friends I have that are one step above that. They're not competitive players, but they're like casual competitive, where their decks are fairly tuned. They want to win, right? Their goal is to win the game and have their deck do their thing, but they're not ramping with these really crazy cards like Ancient Tomb or Manic Crypt. They're not investing hundreds of dollars into the game to make their deck 1% better. Feel like at a certain point, the additions you make are only going to make your deck slightly better. So there's pre-con or set mechanic, or I just like this one thing, so I built my deck to do this one thing, casual. And then there's casual competitive, where you start to tune that deck up to a point where it wins more consistently, or it does whatever you want the deck to do more consistently. And then there's obviously competitive EDH, where you're trying to like turn 2, turn 3 win the game with like a Thassa's Oracle combo, or some other crazy ridiculous thing where you're just trying to pop off as quickly as possible.
Okay, you said something that has been a point of contention for a lot of people on Twitter, which I want to let's circle back to that, because I want to get to Inu here. So Inu, what about you?
In my groups, they've told me that a casual deck is just your only win condition is just beating face, just like send in units, attack. That's about it,
So like trying to play like StarCraft, where you just select your whole army and just a move. For anybody who plays StarCraft,
That's what I've been told.
no micromanaging or anything like that. Okay, interesting. So Food Time really touched on something there just now that it has been what I've been seeing a lot of, and I think what a lot stirred this up in me was seeing that previous podcast episode of Professor and Kenobi talking about how Commander has changed in the past 5 to 6 years. And Food Time, what you said was some casual competitive, right? And then competitive EDH. And I feel like we're getting to a point now where that line is being blurred very much.
I would tend to disagree, but go on.
Well, why disagree on that? I just want to hear it.
So like a casual competitive deck, right, is something that's like let me grab one of my like hundreds of decks as an example. Like I just built this Tana and Falthus deck, right, where the win condition is have Tana out. She's got trample. She makes 1/1s whenever she does damage. Falthus gives it menace and death touch. So my goal is to hit somebody, make a bunch of tokens, go wide, and then win with like an overwhelming stampede or like a crater hoof behemoth. I don't have that in the deck currently, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Right? So like my goal is to do the thing. I would say that's a casual competitive deck. It knows what it wants to do. It's really efficient at doing it, but it's not a CDH deck where you're trying to win with like a Thassa's Oracle or some broken 2-card combo that's just going to win you the game on the spot. It's not running like a CDH deck, again, is more in tune with what the other decks at the table are going to be doing. So something like running like your mental missteps, your force of wills, your force of negations, to try to stop your opponents from doing their combos, right? Where it's a very interactive game, a lot of low CMC or free spells to try to interrupt the board and really interact and really just hit the ground as hard as you can. But then a casual competitive deck is, I'm going to do this thing that my deck is going to do as efficiently as possible, but I'm not so worried about doing it very, very early, or I'm so worried about countering my opponent's spells because I know they're going to do it really early. So I think there's definitely a point between there where it can get a little muddled, where I've made this super competitive deck that won't maybe stand up to a Thassa Oracle combo deck, but it's better than all my friends' casual decks or even their casual competitive decks, and there's like a thin line there somewhere.
Yeah.
I gotta ask a question here for you, because I have never even heard of an EDH deck playing Mental Misstep, and like I said, I'm probably the least informed on all this, but when you play casual EDH, or not casual, competitive EDH, is it always just 1v1, or is it still a table of 4?
No, it's still a table of 4.
It depends, like if you're playing like tournament-wise, some people do French, some people do Swiss,
Okay. Because I can't imagine playing stuff like Mental Misstep on a table of 4, but I guess
it can matter.
If everyone's playing these super low to the ground decks, then I get it. But I just was amazed when you mentioned that. I was like, dang.
I mean, it counters the Soul Ring.
I was gonna say
Soul Ring.
Someone playing like Leovold, you're like, no Soul Ring. You're going too early. No.
It's just I remember I played EDH probably 10, 12 years ago, and I think it's still before it was even called Commander, and we had what you would probably call now the casual competitive decks that were those were the competitive decks back then, and they were doing,
Mhm.
it's like people that were playing mana flares to try to burn out every opponent for 40, and they
Yeah.
had, or stuff like that, which it was very well tuned, but they still, and they would use combos and things like that, but I never remember really, like, I had what was it, Zur the Enchanter deck back in the day. That was the only
Oh yeah.
competitive type deck I ever had, and that was probably one of the lowest mana curve type decks that I'd ever played in that format. But
And
I
Zur
just
used to be scary too.
right,
Oh, he's still
yeah,
scary. He is
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
still
he
scary.
still is, but I mean, I feel like with all these precons and all these commanders coming out, he's nowhere near like the top of being
yeah,
scary
it
for
was a
me.
different world. I mean, because they didn't print cards for Commander back then. That
Yeah.
wasn't a thing, so it was just a very different. That's so when you were talking about the competitive decks versus the casual competitive, it to me almost feels like that extra competitive tier was created maybe as a result of all of the specific cards that powered up the format,
Yeah, I think the most common CDH win condition though are cards that weren't made for Commander. It's Thassa's Oracle and what's that card everybody combines with? It's like
Demonic
basically the build it.
consultation.
Yeah, those are not made for Commander cards, but
That's true,
they
yeah.
just happen to they're competitive cards.
Yeah,
They
Thassa's
happen
messed
to
up a
win.
lot of formats.
Yeah,
The
and then
one
you have
I've
cards like what's her name? The Najila, the 5-color warrior commander that just wins with an infinite combat step. So
Yeah.
I mean, there's also that, but that card also was made essentially for Commander. It was in
That was
oh
Battle
God, there's so many
Bond.
sets. Battle Bond.
Battle
Yeah.
Bond, right? Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm looking at some of the top commanders right now from EDH Rec, and EDH Rec doesn't really differ between competitive and casual and all that stuff. But even seeing some of this, it's just even looking at some of the top decks, like use Atraxa for example, right? I don't know if Atraxa is like really big in CEDH or anything, but I mean, I think a lot of us know who've played here know that Atraxa can not the most casual commander, right? So, and I think what's hard is I still feel like there's a line that gets blurred, especially nowadays, where everybody focuses more on optimizing. Where just like what Doug said, beginning where it commander you really used to be just taking the draft chaff and the 50-cent rares that had no home anywhere else and make a deck. Not that that happens still today, but it just feels like not as much because
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
it
you'd
could
probably
also
consider that a casual deck.
and it could also be due to a lot of the content creation now that surrounds Commander and how. I mean, just look at all the Commander content creators who do all these deck techs on how to make the most bang for your buck and optimize with $50 or $100, stuff like that too.
Yeah.
So, and I say that having an Atraxa deck, she's powerful, but she isn't CEDH. Yeah, it's.
Oh, fine.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I said, there's this whole conversation going on where casual is just being thrown out left and right when we tried to have the power level talk, especially that started in the beginning of the pandemic and all that, and that turned out to be not the greatest in the long run because what you and I may consider a power level of 5 may be something way different to someone else. There's Rule 0, which I think can fix a lot of stuff with play groups, but you're not going to have Rule 0 everywhere you go, though. Like, you go to an LGS and sit down to play, there could be a good chance, rules, they're just going to be like, oh, well, I only have one deck I brought with me, and it's, my Thassa's Oracle deck type thing. So, I mean, how do we better define this here?
So I think Rule 0 is a bad name for what Rule 0 is, and I think they should change it. Rule 0, it's not really a rule, it's more of a pregame discussion. That's really what it should be called, other than just saying Rule 0. A lot of people say Rule 0 is so I can use cards that are on the ban list, or silver bordered cards, I can discuss doing that, when it really should be what is our intent for the game? What do you guys want to do? I have this deck that wins with Thousands Oracle. I have this deck that wins through combat. I have this Voltron deck. I have this Precon deck. I have this Blood Token deck that I created. Right? Like here's what I have. What do you guys have? We'll figure out. We'll sit down. We'll have a discussion about what we're going to be doing in the game of Commander, and that doesn't always happen, and that's unfortunate. But it really should. It should be more encouraged. And I think changing the name from Rule Zero to pre-game discussion would help immensely, because Rule Zero not everybody knows what that means just by the name. Right?
Yeah, I mean pre-game discussion. I mean, call it what you want. It's another thought that I had, or at least some stuff I've been seeing online too, is Rule Zero pre-game discussion, whatever you want to call it. Is that just trying to, what's the way to put it nicely? I guess have less feel bads in Commander, make sure everybody has a good time. But if you want to play, if all your decks have a certain strategy that no one likes at the table, then you're being excluded at that point.
Okay, I feel that.
I've had groups where someone will come to the table and we'll talk about what decks we want to play. Some people would say, I have this one deck that's really strong. I lost my point of thought already. God dang it. Come back to me. Hold on.
Oh no, it's all right. Doug, any thoughts?
I mean, I'll say that I've never really the whole concept of the Rule Zero stuff. It's weird to me in a little sense that I get the format got so big that they decided they needed to have some kind of structure around it. I was used to just playing with. There was no ban list or anything.
Yeah.
We just played with what we played with.
Yeah, because it used to be you go to an LGS and you say, hey, you want to play Commander? All right, let's play.
Yeah, I mean, we had a Commander night, but it was, we played our pods were huge. I think we played with everyone in one pod, so it was just nutty.
We've done that before, yeah.
And it was, it was fun, but and there was always you kind of knew who the threats were. That part was just as you attended more frequently, it's oh, okay, this guy always brings a really good deck or whatever. So that played into the politics side of it. But I mean, it kind of reminds me of when we played that game the other day, and I was playing, I think I had a Primeval Titan in my deck, and I just threw it in. I was like, oh yeah, this is a good card, not even thinking about the fact that there is a ban list.
Oh yeah, that's right.
It had no particular, it wasn't a combo element or anything. It was just
a good card,
good rampy creature.
Yeah.
And somebody was like, you can't play that, that's banned. It's oh, okay, well, I didn't really care that much, but it didn't. I can understand a little more when your deck is super synergistic. If you're saying, if your deck is built around land destruction and you go to a table, they say we don't play land destruction. It's well, my whole deck's worthless now. That's what its whole basis is. But for little one-off cards, I feel most of them, to me, it's it should be, if you're trying to play casual and your deck hinges that much on one specific card, then you're not really playing casual anymore, Yeah. And that's not, I guess, I'm sure there's some corner case scenarios where that's not, where you could have I play a very casual, I don't know, vampire deck, but it has some banned vampire for its general or something. Those are out there, but
yeah.
For the most part, I think if somebody says we don't want to play with this specific card, I don't think that's a big deal. But when you start calling out specific archetypes, then I can see where that creates potential feel bad situations.
Okay. Anyone else?
I mean, I think archetypes have a little less to do with casual versus non-casual. If you're playing a stacks deck, you could play a casual stacks deck, but no one's going to be happy about it. And I think Rule Zero should be less about that and more, what is the intent behind your deck and what kind of game do we all collectively want to have, right? Maybe you only brought a stacks deck and nobody wants to play against it, and it's well, that's all I brought. Do you guys have anything that can work with my stacks deck? Do you guys bring anything, or otherwise I'm going to be excluded. But if you're bringing a stacks deck or a land destruction deck, you also have to understand most people aren't going to want to play against that, right? Like it's just not a fun archetype to play against, and the
How
point
dare
of
you?
Commander is to have fun.
What? No,
So.
it's if I'm having fun, then that's okay. That's the point, right?
Whenever I hear someone they say they have like a really strong deck or they have like a deck that like no one likes to play against, I always get the urge to see how well some of my decks do against them to see if I can beat them in some form of way. Usually it doesn't really work, but I try. And I usually have fun just trying.
Yeah. See,
I
it's,
always thought that's kind of part of EDH is the political side of, oh, we know this person's playing the busted deck, we can kind of gang up on them if we want.
That too.
Most of the time my friends will like gang up on me because they know I'm going to do some shenanigans that's going to mess up the entire game for them. They're like, we need to get rid of them fast. Like, but shenanigans.
Are we focused too much on everybody's enjoyment in the pod and not focused enough on just playing the game?
I'd argue some people probably are.
I feel a little bit conflicted on this one because when I stream EDH, I want to make sure it's fun and entertaining, right? But if I'm playing off screen with my friends and buddies, I'm a little bit more lax on. I don't care if they do mass land destruction. I don't care if it's they do infinite turns and they win type stuff.
Right, I think the goal's different in different environments.
For
when
sure.
you're just playing with buds and you got, we're just hanging out, having some beers, playing cards. Who cares? Whatever, do your silly stuff.
Yeah.
But then, if it's on stream, you want it to be entertaining for the people watching. And then if you're at like a LGS, then you're in a much more
super competitive mode.
Well, for some people, I could say for others, they may be expecting, it's like if that's their introduction to it, they may be looking for almost the opposite. I mean, I think some people go to an LGS hoping just to find other people to play with. So if you do get put in a really competitive pod right off the bat, it can it can make it hard to feel comfortable getting into the game further. Not always. Some people it's like a drive, but for others it's like, oh, I thought this would be like fun, but really it's just me getting destroyed.
This is no fun at all.
Oh my god. All right. So, off topic here. Baltan, I know you're watching. Fuck off, because I'm getting alerts in my Discord right now, and you're making me... And Efren, too. Fuck off. You guys are making me laugh way too fucking much right now. You all don't see it, but I do. It's, Oh my god, motherfuckers. So, sorry about that. Oh, fuck.
Right.
Fucking
You wanna go back
casuals.
to your original tweet that you called out 4 specific cards
Yeah, let's talk about it.
in your original tweet. Yeah, that's not a bad idea. So you pointed out, what were the 4 cards? I know it was...
They were Manic Crypt, Jeweled Lotus, Smothering Tithe, and Dockside. I mean, if I had a choice, I'd put way more cards in there, but Twitter only lets you do 4 choices.
Yeah. But I mean, that's a good baseline to start with, right? Like,
yeah.
If you're running Dockside Extortionist, there's almost no way you're not running some way to abuse it, right?
Yeah.
I feel like, it's one of those cards that's really easy to abuse with very little work. But I mean, if you're just playing it into your deck that just as my artifact deck, I have those cards, I want to throw it in there. That doesn't necessarily make it competitive. It definitely is a very powerful card and probably shouldn't cost 2 mana. That's a completely different discussion. Card.
Well, if there's not a lot of targets for, or not really targets, if there's not a lot of things on the battlefield for Dockside, he's like useless. It's like a 2-drop, and you get like 2. It's like But there's like 20 things on the field. Hells yes, he's overpowered.
In my experience, at least, right? It's pretty rare that a Dockside is only going to create 2 tokens. You've got 3 opponents. They're all playing at least a Soul Ring and probably some Mana Rocks and maybe like a random 1 or 2 artifacts that synergize with the deck.
See, this
Most
right
of those
here
Mana
tells
Rocks
me
come
that you're
everywhere.
not casual.
I'm not casual, no.
But
I mean, I'm
but
thinking, like,
people will consider it casual though.
Well, I'm saying like the expectation that there's going to be all these Mana Rocks on the field. I
They
would
even
say
come
that
in the precon decks. Every
Yeah.
precon deck comes with a Soul Ring and
signets or whatever.
Arcane Signet,
Yeah.
Commander
Oh,
Sphere,
man.
or
Well, I guess I haven't
some other
gotten
card
a
like that.
precon, but yeah, like, I know those cards are very popular in the format, but uh, I guess when I think of like the closer to like the kitchen table casual style, to me a lot of those decks won't necessarily run that stuff, and I'm sure you're not likely to see a Dockside Extortionist in that either. But
Yeah.
I mean,
75.
I understand why it's a much more competitive card, and I get why it's used, but I can see some tables, yeah, where it would have very little impact unless your deck was already built around it.
Mm-hmm.
And so, what about the next card you want to talk about? Food time.
I just want to talk about like the original cards, like Smothering
Sure.
Tithe, right? I would argue is a bit more casual than something like Dockside. Dockside's going to immediately, more than likely, in most situations, going to give you more value paid for it. Smothering Tithe is a little slow. You need your opponents to draw cards and then to not pay the tax. Tax 2's a lot, but it's going to create you 1 treasure, generally for each of your opponents per turn. So 1 turn cycle is going to give you probably 3 treasures, unless your opponent's drawing a bunch of cards, in which case you're really just punishing them for drawing more cards than 1 per turn, right? And that's not really a bad thing. That's someone who's drawing like 10, 20 cards in a turn, they're probably doing something that's going to end the game pretty soon. So you getting a bunch of treasure off that is kind of a good counter to something like that.
Thinking back on it, it's maybe because I just have played against way too many wheels decks, and especially when Hull Breacher was a thing in EDH, that's why I picked it. I may have gone with the choice of Rhystic Study.
Even Rhystic Study, it's a tax of 1.
But you're right. But I mean, we've all seen Rhystic Study go out of control.
Yeah. I've played in a lot of decks. That happens all the time. But yeah, I'd argue that's probably a little less casual. Even Rhystic Study, I think is honestly a fine card. I mean, it's a 3-mana enchantment that doesn't, unless your opponents don't pay it, like your opponents have the choice for that card to know.
Mm-hmm.
Your opponents can effectively say that card doesn't do anything because I'll pay the extra. So sometimes that card is a 3-mana literally do nothing except for tax my opponent, which not like a tax of 1, not that bad. If you're playing a whole full stacks deck, yeah, it becomes a problem. But
There's one trend I've noticed though with talking about these cards, and I do think Smothering Tithe's not that intense, but you're talking about how the players can control it and it can be a do nothing card. But I've noticed in particular with EDH players, I feel like they are often much more focused on doing their cool thing with their deck than they are about preventing opponents from doing the cool thing with their deck. So I feel like a lot of times people will not pay the tax on these cards because it's,
it stops them from doing what they want to do.
Yeah, exactly. Like they want to do their thing, and so sure, if you have a mana extra, you'll pay it, but they'll never prioritize paying the tax. Well, not never, but very frequently they won't prioritize paying the tax.
100% correct on that, because a lot of times you're just too focused on wanting, like you said, wanting to do your thing.
Yep.
And you
increases their power a bit because of that mindset.
Yeah. Yeah, because you don't want the feel bads, right? You don't want to cause feel bads.
I don't even think it's feel bads. I think it's like a selfish thing more so. Like it's because I mean I don't think anyone, even if a player plays out a Smothering Tithe or a Rhystic Study, if they never get a card or a treasure off of it, it's like kind of annoying, but it's not the end of the world. But I think most people, they're just so intent about like, oh, I want to do my cool thing, and I have my turns planned out for the next 3 turns, so I need to do this, this, and this.
Yeah, and they aren't paying attention.
These taxes don't fit into that,
That they aren't paying attention to the actual board state it's creating.
Yeah.
Or the card advantage people are getting, or the mana advantage, because they're just so focused on the stuff. And I do that too sometimes, especially when I don't.
Bad. It's just
especially when I don't give a crap. But if I'm trying to focus on winning, because I used to play a lot of competitive REL events back in the day, you get that mindset of like trying trying to stop your opponent from doing whatever they can do, but you don't always think like that in Commander, though. It's a mind shift, especially if you're not playing the competitive EDH.
For me, I always have contingencies just in case someone does mess up with my plan. So always like my Kalia deck, so everyone's obviously going to mess with it. It has so many contingencies just to make sure she doesn't die, or she stays on the field, or she gets back to the field in some way. So it's more lean towards of I have a lot of counter spells in this deck that has no blue spells. Let's go.
Oh, so Efren says never have contingencies. My decks are all balls, no brains. I've seen the way you play, Efren. I would agree.
Is that Efren's name from high school?
That's what they used to call him in high school. All balls, no brains.
But I've seen where people play Kalia deck and they're like, I'm gonna just I swing turn 2, kill this guy, he's gone. And everyone's like, we're turning to his person immediately because he's a threat. So I was just like, it's like I'm gonna just counterspell Kalia. I'm a red elemental blast it instead. So no, you're not doing that.
Yeah.
Or I have or I'll throw in like a red in one of my red decks. I'll throw in whatchamacall, the wild enchantment. Shoot, can't think of it now. It makes it where like every spell you play, you exile it and you reveal from the top of your deck until you reveal a card that has the same type. I forgot what it's called. Enchantment.
I know what card you're talking about. I don't remember the name neither.
Yeah, I can't remember either. What about the last 2 cards, Food Time?
Okay, so you've got Jeweled Lotus, a card that can be casual, but is probably leaning a little more into, again, competitive or casual competitive, right? It's going to let you ramp out your commander faster, and sometimes that's gonna like win you, right? If you've got like a strategy that requires your commander to win very quickly, like
turn 1 Grand Arbiter.
Turn 1 Great Arbiter, or like turn 1, I'm thinking like Najila, because she can combo off very quickly
yes.
off of turn 1 Lotus. But if you're playing like an 8 mana, 9 mana commander, Jeweled Lotus is just helping you get out your commander faster. I don't think it makes it competitive. I think that's totally fine for a casual deck. I mean, you're playing a 9 mana commander, you're not competitive, right?
How dare you?
Yes, how dare me?
Yeah.
I do dare.
Yeah, like what about Gishath? Like if I want like turn 2 Gishath.
I don't think Gishath's a competitive deck. I'd argue it's not really. I mean, you have to attack with it in order to do the thing.
Tell that to Baltan.
It's not a competitive deck.
Oh.
Like a CEDH deck? It's a casual competitive deck, I'd argue. I wouldn't argue it's a CEDH deck. He's not winning that with that on like turn 3 or turn 4.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just BSing because, like I said, I don't even know the competitive EDH meta and all that. Like, is there even a website that even has the competitive EDH meta? Because that's another thing to bring up. Like, how do you even determine what the meta is in CEDH and just in EDH in general? I think with the advent of Spell Table, we're seeing, like, I've seen way more types of decks more than I would just at my local LGS, right? Because of Spell Table. Mm-hmm. But before getting into that, let's have you talk about the last card.
And that's Manic Crypt.
Yes.
Manic Crypt is a card I would probably used to be like, oh man, your deck's so competitive playing Manic Crypt. Now it's just a Soul Ring that costs 0 mana and hurts you. I don't really care if people play Manic Crypt. I like watching people die to it. But I wouldn't argue your deck is instantly competitive or instantly not casual just for throwing one card in there. I think it really depends on the intent with it. Are you going to make infinite mana with it very quickly? All right, you're probably competitive. Are you just throwing it in there because it's a card you pulled out of a pack and it's a good ramp spell? Fine, whatever.
Yeah, and that's a lot of what I've been seeing with a lot of the comments where intent does matter, and I agree with a lot of that. Intent does matter with what you're doing with these cards. But
no,
I mean, isn't everyone's goal to win?
No,
not always.
Mine's not.
No.
My goal is do the cool thing.
I mean, it depends on the deck that I'm playing, right? Because like if I'm
Also
playing
true.
my Shadrix deck, my goal for that game is to make sure someone else wins, and I'm in second place. My goal for like my Grand Arbiter deck, yeah, that I want to win.
I kind of like this. One of the people that tweeted on your original post about these cards, they said, I think there's a difference when you have a single Soul Ring in a 99 card deck versus or from 4 similar effect Soul Rings. The odds of good opening hand increase, thus making it less casual. And that's what stands out to me with some of the mana cards specifically. Is not so much that, I mean, you know, Soul Ring's been around in Commander since like its inception pretty much.
Yeah.
And not that Manic Crypt was there too, but it just was a lot harder to get a copy of it. But with the increased availability of those cards and the increased amount of them, and just the overall increased amount, like I feel like things like Soul Ring used to be like slightly more punishing, because there was not as effective fixing. You had really good fixing potentially, but most people weren't playing, you know, full sets of dual lands and all that kind of stuff. You didn't have things like Command Tower or Arcane Signet or things like that. Those all have really, like, to me, have made these other cards feel a lot less punishing, from what I can tell, at least. You know, it's not as problematic to devote spots to colorless mana when you have all this other really, really strong fixing.
Yeah, that's an interesting point too. I think old version of casual and current version of casual are very different. I think most people are pretty aware of EDH Rec, and they can go on and they can find, better synergies for their decks and for their cards. I'd argue most casual players are somewhat aware, at least, of EDH Rec. If you go look up, a commander, you'll find EDH Rec if you're looking up commander content. It's just
Right.
It's very synonymous with the format now. It's a very
Yeah.
very well known website. Most people will point you at it too. If you go to an LGS and be like, "Hey, I'm building this deck," someone will be like, "Oh, check out this website. It's really cool. It'll help you find cards for your deck." At least in my experience, right? It's all anecdotal, but that's going to make casual players have like a good baseline to actually just build a deck that isn't just I just slapped together 100 cards at random. Like I've played with people who just recently had started getting into Commander and into Magic, and I think it was like around Ixalan block, and they built a black-white vampire deck out of just the draft chaff they had, and I played against him and absolutely crushed him. I was like, oh, I need to build a deck that is much more on that level, right? So, which I did, and then as he started to play more and he started to get a bigger collection and started to understand Commander more, and he saw a lot more of the decks that we were playing at the table. He looked through our cards and stuff. He's like, oh, okay, I'm starting to understand kind of what I need here. And he doesn't seek out videos or deck techs, or I don't even think he uses EDH Rec, but he's much more aware now of the typical like cadence of a commander, especially he again, casual player, really only does like precons or builds decks, doesn't really buy like singles, right? But he's watched a lot of like game nights or like I hate your deck and stuff. And he's like, all right, now that I've seen a lot more Commander in action, I understand a bit more of like what the baseline of a Commander deck is compared to what he was building before.
Yeah, no, and I feel like Doug brought up a good point, and I remember that was a big complaint about Sol Ring in the near when I first started playing EDH was it was a card that always had to belong in the 99, right? Now we have a lot more of those cards now that need to belong in the 99. Arcane Signet, Command Tower, whatever other signets. Make sure you have X amount of ramp and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, and I also kind of remember Sol Ring was like a common card, but it wasn't necessarily something that everyone owned because it was harder to find until they
They
put a lot of
printed it to
reprints out.
oblivion.
Yeah, I mean, I do remember it was one of those cards that was like kind of cheap because it was banned and everything, and then as EDH picked up in popularity, you just saw the price creep up, and so it was not necessarily. I mean, it was kind of like considered a very powerful card for EDH, but I don't remember it being one that everyone owned. unlike now where it's
Yeah, no, that's
just
very true.
everywhere.
Yeah. So we've got a new person that just joined our little chat, a mnemonic tutor. Go ahead and give a little, intro.
Awesome. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Awesome. So yeah, I'm Mnemonic Tutor. Been playing Magic since Alpha. Don't play much these days other than EDH, and even that hasn't been in over a year now because of COVID. But prior to COVID, pretty much that's all I played was EDH. But I would be what I would consider myself. I said I would be what I consider an extreme casual, meaning the vast majority of my decks, maybe 99% of them, are just pre-cons or slightly modified. So I don't really do competitive or any of that stuff. I'm more looking for fun, and whether I win or not is just, whatever happens.
Okay, nice. And Doug, you said you needed to step out.
Yeah, I gotta call it a night here, but appreciate getting to talk with you guys. It's fun. And,
Yeah.
enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you, Doug. Thank you for stopping by.
Yeah, I'll catch y'all later.
Later days.
All right, bye, Doug. All right, so Mnemonic Tutor, I want to hear some of your thoughts on what we've discussed, some of the cards we brought in, and you mentioned you had a lot of hot takes too, and I'm always down for hot takes.
Hot takes is the right phrase, because I've actually been trying to get a different format of Commander off the ground for a while now. Nothing important. It's not important what it is, but the point was to see if there was a way to kind of mitigate the impact of these older, highly powered cards that are way too expensive for the average person to afford, and not even in just CEDH realm, just in general. And of course, it has its drawbacks because the mana bases aren't going to be as fast or as robust, and so that is a hot take, and that a lot of Commander players would never ever want to do something like that. But I've always been one that wants to include as many people as I can at the table, and of course anyone can come with a pre-con, but some cards are just prohibitive for some people to get, and I would hope that they're one of two things: either we can find a hybrid format of Commander that makes it easier in terms of accessibility, or maybe Wizards starts kind of upping the power level of the pre-cons to be something more competitive, maybe like a level 5-6 deck, not a CEDH deck, but maybe 5 to 7, somewhere around there.
I feel like they've been doing that lately. Wizards has been making a lot more precons better out of the box. I mean, some of the Prosper one out of the D&D set was really good. The Simic one from Strixhaven just out of the box is really good.
They've definitely been doing a better job for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, and so the 4 cards you listed, I kind of laughed because I've obviously seen at least 2 of them on a regular basis. Manic Crypt I see a lot, and also Smothering Tithe. I haven't seen a Jeweled Lotus, but that's probably just because it came out, or at least has been more common in recent time when I haven't really been playing. Then of course the Dockside Extortionist I haven't really played against yet. So, but I think I'll echo what a lot of other people said. There's a kind of 2 things I look at here. One is intent, right? Is this deck designed to stomp on people? Or is it more of a jank kind of, it combos at some point off of 4 combo pieces, and it's going to take me forever to assemble it. And, there's plenty of interaction available along the way to prevent it from going off. But when it finally does, it ends the game, and, we move on to the next one. So I jokingly mentioned Golos in the chat earlier because prior to that ban, it seemed like Golos was becoming the creature/commander version of Sol Ring, and that it was almost a must-have as your commander, unless you specifically wanted to play a counter Golos deck of some kind. So that one I was kind of, I wouldn't say happy, just it wasn't a surprise that they quote unquote ban that card. But a banning of cards is another area where you get all the hot takes with Commander. So we'll leave that one for another time. But
okay,
I think think overall, the format's fairly healthy. And again, in these, it's all I have to echo what someone else said. It's all about intent for these 4 cards. If this is just something you threw in there, you're not designing your deck around. Someone mentioned, having 4 of a specific effect or something you're trying to do, where you're trying to have more conformity as opposed to variance. I think they can be casual, just like you can have casual Baral decks, or you can have casual, decks of various other more powerful commanders. And then you can also have some super, Omnath, I think, is a great example. Someone mentioned Omnath earlier. You can have some very cutthroat Omnath decks, and then some that are just hurtle around forever and then try to combo off at the very end with something.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's the format's healthy overall, right? But I would agree that if your intent is to if you're using these cards in a way to make your deck so powerful that it's hard to interact with it or stop it, and yeah, it's absolutely not casual. But I could see where someone has a Smothering Tithe in their casual deck, and it's a one-of effect tax, right? And it's just they're really using it more for resourcing than for stacks or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, interesting. Did you have something to say, Food Time?
So with intent, I think there's a lot to unpack there, right? I have a friend I play with constantly. I've been playing Magic with him since we were children. And a lot of the decks he builds are not competitive. They're not super fast. They're not, intended to win quickly, but they're mean. They're very mean. And I feel like some people will look at a mean deck, like a land destruction deck, and call that competitive, when really it's not. It's just he enjoys being mean in the game of Magic, and that's fine. Like, he's got a Torburn deck that's just a lot of, oh, you played a card, take some damage. Oh, you played a land, take some damage, right? And that's annoying to play through. Or like a Shattering Brothers deck, where he's just not going to let you have permanents on the battlefield, ever, at all, at any point. And the intent there is, I just like being mean with this deck, because for me that's fun. I like being the villain. And I think a casual player will look at that and be like, oh, that deck's super competitive because I can't do anything. When really his intent is just, I like to be the villain. I like when everyone gangs up on me, and I can be that player that everybody that everybody can essentially team up on, right? So that they can have a good time.
Cough, blue intent. Players.
He doesn't play blue at all.
No, but I'm saying a lot of the villains in my group. Hey, this is a blue player. Get him.
Yeah. Oh no, you found out my secret.
So, yeah, it's just there's a lot, right, to a commander deck as well.
So
it's just a lot.
So I got a question for the group here, and part of what also spurred this too, my tweet, and not only seeing that podcast between Professor and Pleasant Kenobi, was there was a tweet that Kristen Emily put out, looks like yesterday, and she's a member of the CAG, the Community Advisory Group for the Rules Committee, and she said, and this is where I kind of agree what she's saying here. Maybe casual EDH now is just turn 6 decks. Maybe we need to really push for a new definition that is not CEDH and also not whatever that is. Social is a term bandied around by many at this point. Is there a better one? Will this do enough to put a band-aid on Rule 0? And I see where she's coming from with this, because decks are getting a lot faster now. Even casual decks are getting faster now because of not just the precons, but so many cards getting printed for Commander that what you like I take a look at my Krufix deck, for instance. I used to consider that my most powerful deck. Now it's to a point, before I did upgrades to it, that it was slow as hell. And now that there's just so many good Commander cards being printed that help speed things up, is casual 6-turn format now?
I would argue against it. I would say casual is not a 6-turn format. I'd argue casual is probably somewhere like 12 plus, right? Like, I've played some pretty casual games where those games have gone on for like 3 hours. It's
you and I have been a part of those too.
Yeah. And I those are casual games where we're not being super competitive. We're trying to win as fast as we can. But I've also played against people who are like, this isn't my strongest deck, right? It's not my like CEDH deck, but it'll win on turn 6. And again, I think I would use the term casual competitive for that. casual, casual competitive, and then competitive.
Yeah,
I think casual competitive is a good kind of middle ground.
And I like what Kristen says here because I know she plays a lot of EDH, probably a lot more than a lot of us here. And it's interesting because with her experience, she says like that's a lot of what she sees now is turn 6 decks, and they call themselves casual. I want to hear some thoughts from Inu and Mnemonic too.
I would kind of agree with what Food Time or Karen said. There's a lot of what Food said. There's a lot of I guess room for interpretation in these kind of labels. I think back to my own experience playing EDH for all these years, and to the best of my recollection, I can't remember a game that ended super fast. Let's say turn 3, turn 5, 4, 5, 6, whatever. Where I actually enjoyed the game, whether I won or not. Historically, the games that I remember being the most fun were the ones that lasted over an hour. The ones where we were playing Plane Chase Commander or something like that. So it's I get the urge to kind of end the game fast when it's one of those that people are just durdling and not doing anything kind of thing.
Oh yeah.
But if there's a lot of interaction, a lot of combat, a lot of stuff happening, and it goes over an hour, that's an excellent game to me. And I would consider that, probably more on the casual level than a turn 6 win deck.
Yeah, one other thing I want to just kind of mention, right, is you said she's part of the CAG. So they're probably playing more games with people who pay a lot of attention to Magic. I play, in my personal play group, I'm the only person that goes online and looks at spoilers, for the most part, right? I'm the only person that is really invested into Magic in a big way.
Who's pretty obsessed with it, yeah.
A little, just a tad, yeah.
Just
you might
slightly,
say like
slightly.
80 decks is a little obsessed. But I'll play with like my girlfriend or her sister or just some friends in real life that used to play a lot of Magic, don't play as much anymore. Invite them over for Commander Night. They come over, they hang out, they play, and they are casual players. They hardly pay attention to Magic unless I show them something or bring it up. They're not super into Magic. And if you're a CAG member, I would imagine the people you are playing with are much more in tune with Magic as a game and what's happening and all the recent sets and all the recent cards and what the optimizations actually are, as compared to somebody who really doesn't pay attention to Magic and it's just a game they can play.
Right. It's enfranchised versus disenfranchised players.
Yeah.
I would agree with that.
That's a good point.
I think there's also a regional aspect to it. If you were coming of age to play Magic and you lived in a certain part of the country, say the West Coast somewhere, your access to the game, the cards, especially older cards, was a lot more than a lot of other areas. So there's also a difference there in that even the player who's been playing for 25 years, some of them did not have access to the same card pools that were prevalent in other areas of the country. So that's also not to mention international. That's a whole nother mess.
That makes a lot of good. That's a really good point, because I've said many times on my podcast before, when I started in Urza Saga, there was no game shop or anything like that. I would only play with friends, and we'd have to trade basic lands with each other because we could only find literal booster packs at a small comic shop. There was no intro decks, none of that in my town.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
We had shops, but Magic was not very popular. So I was born and raised in Texas. I'm now in California. We had shops there, but they didn't carry a lot of Magic product, if any. And I realized that early on it was very constrained, the supply. But I distinctly remember a lot of the product I ordered or that I acquired early on was stuff that I would order through mail order stuff in magazines, in like Game Inform, not Game. It was Inquest and a couple others. Yeah. They would have like some what we would now consider like e-retailers, although back then it was more of like send an order form filled out and a check for this amount. And
yep, I remember that.
We'll send you like 2 starter decks and 3 or 4 boosters of whatever. That's how I had to get stuff in Texas, at least for the first couple of years. I think after Magic kind of really became big, a lot more of the store started stocking product.
Yeah, I was lucky when I was a kid. My friend, the same friend that plays the main decks now, his dad would go to like garage sales and yard sales, and he would buy all the Magic cards just in giant bulk. And we got really lucky. There was just a lot of just cards that we just had access to. We didn't know what any of them were. We didn't know what was good, what was like expensive. We just had all these cards, and we just built decks. We were lucky in that regard. Obviously,
yeah.
I think I'm a little younger than most of you. I'm in my late 20s. So I didn't start playing Magic until I could read, which is essentially when I started. Because I like the art and the cards and the fantasy aspect. But
Are you trying to call us old, bro?
a little bit.
I think that's what's happening here.
Well,
but at least you don't have. Well, maybe you might, but I can tell you that from my generation of players, I cringe when I think back of the kind of cards we played without sleeves with.
Oh, yeah.
Alpha and beta.
I also think
and,
that, yeah.
Oh man, I don't even want to remember those games now because of what we did to those cards. I mean, we would go to school with them just wrapped in rubber bands.
Yup,
in our
dude,
bags.
that was the thing. It's we're going in old man territory here.
Yeah,
because I mean I did the same during Urza Saga and all that. Like I remember when I came back to Magic during because I left right after, was it Nemesis or Odyssey came out? I can't remember. And then I came back to the game when Ravnica and Kamigawa were out, and just bought a starter deck and started playing with no sleeves. And my friend was like, "What are you doing? Why aren't you sleeves up?" I'm like, "What do you mean? I don't give a shit about the cards," and just start bending them and
yeah.
yeah. Come to find out, like, oh shit, a lot of those cards are worth money.
Yeah, that's what's crazy. Is it back then it was just paper.
Yeah.
Now it's paper with an implied value.
Yeah, back when I like first started like getting cards was like in Yu-Gi-Oh back in like middle school. I'm 31, so that's like, a good 18 years ago or whatever. And I didn't know about sleeves or nothing. I was like, oh, I want to keep this card really nice. I'm gonna put Scotch tape on it.
Man.
Ooh,
Like 12. I don't know what those sleeves are. Like,
damn.
Yep,
The right
that blue
thought.
eyes worthless.
Yep, those were the
Ooh.
days.
Yeah, did not know anything about nothing. Now I get a new pack. I buy like some penny sleeves, some dragon shields, and just start sleeving immediately. I'll buy a booster box and have sleeves ready to go just to start sleeving rares.
Oh damn.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
true.
And
yeah,
I started Magic maybe like pretty much just 12 years ago. Like
that's
Whenever
an
that
interesting
gets
way to
used
say just 12 years ago, but of course the game is what, 26 years old now, I think, or something like that.
Something like that.
Right.
Somewhere around there. I don't remember. I was in high school when I started playing.
it's like about 30 years old now since it came out in like the mid 90s.
What came out at what, 94?
94, yeah.
Yeah, so it's like
And
25 years old.
Yeah,
Well,
and I'm
it-
pretty sure
It's gonna
I'm
be
pretty sure when
30 years
I got my
soon.
almost, yeah, in 3 years it'll be 30 years. That's a long time.
Fuck.
And to think that Morrow has been part of it for almost that entire period, not all of it, but maybe all but like maybe 1, 2 or 2 years.
Yeah, you're right.
It's a long time to do anything.
Yeah. So Inu, I wanted to hear your thoughts on the whole turn 6 casual EDH.
I mean, it depends. Like you can go turns. It depends on what you're doing. Like you said, like intent and as well. I've seen like turn 6 be like, it's really just he just hit you really hard. That's about it mostly.
Okay.
But like I don't know. Most of like I see casual, like I said, is just you're just smacking them in the face with cards. That's all you're really doing. That's how I see most casual decks. Because a lot of time I have people who are playing competitively, and it's like, oh, I'm just win on turn 2. Like, oh, so I get to do nothing. Okay.
I want to throw another hot take in here.
Sure.
I would say that another good differentiator between casual and uncasual is if you are not, again, this is a hot take, if you are not engaging in creature combat, and your deck is nothing but spells trying to combo, that is not a casual deck.
I disagree a little bit.
I mean, there's exceptions for sure, but I would say in general, right?
I mean, maybe. I mean, I've got decks that are no creatures in them at all, but that's part of the deck building constraint that I put on myself, and I'm not trying to combat. I'm just trying to sling a bunch of spells with like a Niv commander and draw a bunch of cards. Like that's all I care about.
Your mono red shit, what's her name?
That's got a couple creatures, but yeah, my intent is not to hit with people with creatures. But honestly, I might turn that into a CDH deck because it's so damn fast. Every time I play it, I feel bad because I take one really long turn and I'm like, oh, I just won. Oops.
Yeah.
I have a Loki deck that I'm running. Not really Loki. What's his name? Tybalt. The Tybalt Kaldheim Planeswalker, where it's like it itself is casual because it's like it's just land fetching for land and artifacts. The whole point of it is to play your deck, and that's it. So it's as competitive as your deck is.
See, that can be fun.
Yeah.
Yep. It's like send triplets in a different way.
Yeah, it's completely casual because if you're playing casual deck, I'm playing casual deck. If you're playing competitive deck, I'm playing competitive deck.
Well, go on.
I was going to say it also, I think intent is one of the themes that we've kind of been harping on here. And I think another one is just the efficiency of your deck, right? Like, or optimization is maybe a better word. Like, I think of back in Theros era when Perforos came out, the mono red Perforos. Yes, you could absolutely have a cutthroat Perforos deck that just was totally optimized to not actually hit anybody with a creature, just burn them out. But there was also a lot of people were just putting together builds where they were getting random cards that would create creatures and maybe trying to win that way. I think the level of optimization also matters here, and there's definitely I've heard takes both ways, especially on Magic Twitter, of the leveling of the decks. Like, is your deck a tier or level 1, level 2, or or maybe
or the power level.
Power level. And obviously that's very subjective, right? But I think it's one of those where I think what dictates the power level at the end of the day, assuming you have a pretty stout commander you can work with, is the optimization of that deck. If you've optimized to kind of hedge against variance in a commander deck, you're in a competitive area. You're not in casual anymore.
And that's where it comes. And I wanted to bring up tutors on that too, because that's also another card that rides that fine line of casual and competitive. The other thing, just like we mentioned before, with how much Commander has changed just in the past 5-6 years, now that Wizards is printing more stuff for Commander, it makes it easier to optimize your decks now, because there's these cards meant for Commander. So, and this is where still the question becomes, like, just really how blurred are the lines between casual and competitive getting, right? I mean, obviously we can have some fine lines, like, Thassa Oracle combo, that's CEDH. Like, no question about it. If your whole goal is just to do that, then that's competitive EDH, to do it as quickly as you can. But, say on the other hand, you have a Kenrith deck, and you've tried to optimize it as best you can. Is that considered competitive EDH? Or, like, what is considerate?
Depends on what you mean by optimize, right? Are you optimized into winning as quickly as possible, or finding the thing you want to do with the deck as quickly as possible?
Yeah, so, and that's where intent comes, right? Because we keep going back to that. And
even with tutors, I think intent matters. Like, there are decks I have where I use my tutors to find answers to problems, and then there's decks I have where I use tutors to find my win condition as quickly as possible. So that one's a little bit more competitive. The one where I'm looking for answers is a little more casual, because it's like, that guy just spit out like 300 creatures. I need to find a sweep right now. Let me go tutor.
Exactly. And I would say in all of my decks, the only time I use tutors is for that reason too. Someone has done something egregious at the table, and board needs a reset of some kind, right? That's really what I have them for. I usually don't run a lot of targeted removal. A lot of times I just run nothing but board wipes for that reason, just to kind of reset. Because we talked about some of these more powerful cards that the Twitter post that started this chat. There are others, right, that are not on there that if they show up in just the right order in the right deck, could even in a non-competitive deck could completely put the rest of the table on the defense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, you're 100% right. And like I said, I don't know if I have anything much else to say with this topic because like I said, intent matters with it. Anyone else get any other takes on it, Inu or anything?
Like pretty much, honestly, it's just really the intent on what you're going to do with that deck. You know, how much. You know, if you're just doing shenanigans, you're pretty fairly casual, but you might be competitive casual. But if you're, you know, trying to win every game as quickly and as fast as possible, you're competitive. That deck is just straight competitive.
Is the problem with Commander that there's really no set meta?
Probably.
Because
Probably.
it's really easy for when you look at other formats like Standard, Modern, Pioneer, Legacy, you can easily look at a myriad of websites and see what the meta is and see what is competitive. Sure, you can build a homebrew deck that can, beat the meta in those formats, but with Commander,
You do that by knowing the meta.
yeah.
I think the only place a meta exists is in competitive EDH, straight up CEDH.
Yes, I was going to say
that's where there is a meta. Right?
But
I think
where can you go look up that meta though?
I don't think there's a good resource for that right now. I think you just have to talk to other competitive EDH players. So like Thassa Oracle combo tends to be the one I see the most that people discuss. I've seen at least one list where the win condition is actually just combat damage, which is great. I love to see that. I think the other common win condition is either infinite turns or like infinite combat stuff, something like that with like Najila, right? But where's I going with this? I was going somewhere with this, but I forgot.
Meta.
That's a
competitive
good point.
EDH meta.
Yes, the meta. So the old meta, right, used to be Flash into Protein Hulk into game-winning combo.
Yep.
But then they banned Flash because it was such a big part of the meta that there was really nothing better than that. And I remember, this was a couple years ago when they made 1v1 Commander Key on Magic Online, and they had a different ban list than the regular Commander ban list, and Emrakul was not banned. So the best deck to play was Brawl Polymorph. That was just
I do remember that. Yes,
Polymorph. Yeah, with nothing but counter spells.
I remember that.
Interaction. Yeah, and like that was the meta, right? And then that doesn't really work in a 4-player game, I think. In a format where you have 3 total opponents, the meta is much harder to define because there's so much variance in 100-card singles in deck. There's variance in the players you're playing with, their skill level, their threat assessment level, the cards that are being played in whatever order they're being played. The variance is just so much higher. It's hard to have a defined meta for just straight up.
Yeah, that's true. Because the card pool, I mean, theoretically, the card pool for selection is the same, but it's not, right? Like the meta shrinks that card pool significantly. There's a group I'm part of on Facebook that is just EDH in general here in the Bay Area. But there's a subgroup of those that are just CEDH, and that's where you'll find out what the meta is, because it's people building all these various decks. Like I remember when it was Protean Hulk, and then for a while it was like Yisan and a couple of others, and I don't know what it is now because I don't play CEDH. But being part of these groups, just kind of listening to people talking about playing, building these decks and playing them over and over. What the meta would look like, and the meta does shift there too, because I know that there was a point in time when the meta was more around just trying to win as fast as you can without interaction of any kind. Then that shifted to where you were hedging interaction to prevent someone else from comboing off. So I guess it evolves too, just like as the card pool evolves, probably the meta evolves significantly.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, before Thassa's Oracle, it was Labman. Thassa's Oracle's just better most of the time.
Yeah. Yeah, and CDH really isn't my thing. I lurk in those areas just to listen to what people are talking about and what they're doing, and it's more, I think, so that I don't play those type of things, right? Those type of combos, or because they're very oppressive. One of the things that has always, I wouldn't say bothered me, but I've not been a big fan of in EDH has been stacks. it's just never really sat right with me. And I realize it's a valid play style and there are valid decks there and everything. I'm not saying, otherwise. It's just one of the,
annoying.
you mentioned earlier that, you have a friend who likes to be mean. And to me, it's like the barometer of EDH for me is it fun or unfun? Stacks is not fun. Even when someone let me borrow their Stacks deck and I played it, to me, it still wasn't fun. It was just oppressive, and I didn't like that.
America. I mean, what?
Yeah, exactly.
As long as I'm having fun, that's all that matters.
That's all that matters, right?
If I'm having fun, you're having fun. Because that's all that's being served today.
That's right. The beatings will continue until morale improves.
Oh, would Heliod Walking Ballista be a CEDH combo now too?
It can be.
I've seen a list for it.
Is it harder to pull off in EDH compared to, say, when people do it in Modern or Pioneer?
It's harder to pull off in mono white because you don't have as much interaction.
If you can make each of your decks for whatever color they are to be able, like he said, be efficient or optimized to get through your cards faster, get the right sequences and whatnot, then it can be super competitive, But if it's like, oh, I have this card and I can't do anything now, it's like, he's kind of useless.
Yeah, one other thing I want to maybe kind of point out right towards the competitive versus casual is Zuby, you mentioned earlier like a wheel deck, right?
Yeah.
My girlfriend has a wheel deck, but I would argue that it's a pretty casual wheel deck. It's a Kess, so you can cast spells from your graveyards, and all she really wants to do is wheel every single turn if possible. That's it. There isn't like
is this Nekasar or something or?
No, it's Kess. So
Kess. Yeah, you said that. You said that. Sorry.
Yeah, you can cast in this resource from your graveyard. So you basically can double up on all your wheels, and if you pitch a wheel, you can cast a wheel. She just wants to wheel. She just wants to draw cards and discard cards for things like that enchantment that cares about you discarding cards. But there's no Narset, there's no Whole Breacher if that was still legal. Like, there's nothing that makes it miserable to play against other than you have to constantly keep discarding your hand.
She wants it where everyone lose by drawing their deck out, pretty much.
So she has Thassa's Oracle in that deck, but it's not a Thassa Oracle combo deck, right? So, because I know we've talked about Thassa's Oracle a lot, especially in regards to CDH, but it's not a competitive deck, even though it has Thassa's Oracle, if that makes sense. So it kind of goes back to like the first list of, if you're playing these cards and you call them casual, you're wrong. Essentially, that's what you said. In less words or more words, but like that, you kind of see what I'm getting at here is one single card doesn't turn your deck from being casual or competitive. It's the combination of cards, the intent behind them, and kind of like what there's a lot more behind it than just an individual card making that decision for how powerful
and your
deck
optimization level on that deck
Yeah.
too.
It's fairly much just the intent, pretty much, really.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think intent drives it all, right? Because you
pretty much
without intent, you're not going to have the level of optimization that becomes problematic, right? So the intent is where it starts, but the follow through is in the optimization and the kind of the level of oppressiveness or just effectiveness of a deck at a table. Right. And this is one thing that I think has been talked about several times on the Command Cast, on their video podcast, that they're always talking about trying to have this discussion before you sit down at a new play group or just a new table in general.
That rule 0.
Right, about where the power level sits for various decks. But even in that instance, that is subjective to individuals, right? If you're a CEDH player, a casual competitive deck, as we've kind of branded them in this stream, would be weak. And so you would come to the table saying, yeah, this is like a 2, maybe a 3. For that table, it's a 5 or a 6, right? So it is really hard without it being a regular play group to kind of have matching assessments of what power levels are.
Yeah.
And I've thought about this many times and I just can't figure it out. How can we put together like a cheat sheet or some kind of guidelines that people can go by to talk about power level with people who are not part of their normal play group? And I have no solution for it. It's just something that's difficult to do.
Well, and that's what we were talking about earlier on in the podcast, where when that power level sheet did come out, from Channel Fireball and then from Command Cast and whoever else. I think there may have been one more floating where that's sort of been skewed a whole lot too, right?
Yep.
I mean, it's even hard to say even precons now fall in the precon level of deck power level, because not all especially this year there's some precons that I would say no, they're too strong for precon level.
Yeah, I mean, if you remember the 4-color commanders, right? You had Brea and Atraxa.
Yeah, Brea
Edgar.
and no,
There were others.
Edgar was 3, but no, there was
There were a couple others.
Garrett,
right?
no, not Garrett.
The Cascade one on combat damage.
Yeah.
Atraxa.
Yeah. Oh my God, what are the other two? Oh, the Theros one, the married couple.
Tyros.
And Kira.
Yeah, I always
Yes,
mess up that
yes.
name really
Yeah,
bad.
I always mess up the name too.
So
it
it was
those
like
two.
Idris.
Idris, that's right.
Oh yeah.
Atraxa, Brea, and the couple. I always miss their name.
The other two, K and T.
There you go, K and T.
Melitus, Melitus or whatever.
Yes.
Saskia.
So like in that meta, even right, 2 of those 4 decks were much more powerful than the other 2.
Yeah.
Right, and they're all precons, right? But if you had Atraxa or you had Brea, now Brea, I think in its stock form was a lot less busted than Atraxa was, but with reasonable optimization, Brea could become incredibly powerful, especially in like a casual meta, not CEDH or anything.
Yeah.
So yeah, even obviously to your point, comparing precons across the years is hard because there were there's a massive difference in power level across all those years, but even within the same year and the same set there were varying power levels. So like another one that comes to mind is the 5-color dragon deck.
The Ur Dragon.
The Ur Dragon or Scion of the Ur, whatever, I can't remember who the commander was in that deck.
The Ur Dragon.
Ur Dragon.
Yeah.
That was another one where in theory that was an incredibly powerful deck, but the mana base was pathetic on it. So, but again,
Garbage.
with just a mana base update to speed it up, that deck could become very powerful in a casual meta. So there's a lot of areas where it's just
and that was the same
big discrepancies.
The same year they put out the Edgar Markov deck, and that deck out of the box, just banger.
Yes, I that's one of my favorite decks.
Even Kess out of the box was really good. All those decks were good. I mean, you could make an argument that the Cat one, I think, was probably the weakest, but a few upgrades.
The Cat one was weak. But the other commander in that deck was a lot better. The one Nazan, he was a lot better.
The hammer one.
Is that the Zerg commander? Or
that's the Selesnya.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, the Selesnya one had the hammer.
Yeah, there was the
Nazan was way stronger.
I remember.
But if you change that deck by adding 1 card to it, and like if you want to keep it themed to cats and whatnot for Arub, is you get that there's 1 cat that has infect, and you just play him. And you're like, I'm just infect everyone to death.
No.
Then it becomes competitive.
It's poor cats.
Yeah, it was like a double strike infect cat that hit for like 1. Yeah. So he's like, oh, he's now hitting for 5 double strike, and it's like, well, he's dead.
My cats would never poison me, so.
No, it's infect.
Yeah. I think to this day, my favorite precon of all of them is Marin.
Marin was really good out of the box. Marin and Izix were really good out of the box.
Yeah, but Marin just out of the box, just so much value out of that. Now, granted, you had to grind for it, right? It was a late game deck, but
yeah.
But man, was it it was just fun to play. So yeah,
Lost Leonin, is that the card you were talking about, Inu?
Probably.
Yeah. Food Time just put it in the MTG general chat.
Yeah, I run that one of my decks.
Yeah, it's just here you go.
Yeah, I haven't opened any. Like I have the 2 precons from the most recent set and the 2 from the one before. I haven't opened them yet. I haven't played them obviously, but I'm looking forward to the day when I get to play them.
Yeah,
I've
because
heard
Will
great
had
things.
the zombie one from Midnight Hunt just out of the box. That one's really good. You could make some quick and easy cheap upgrades and make it a pretty good zombie tribal deck.
Yeah, I switched. So my original zombie deck was Grimgran, and then he swapped towards Jisa and Graf, and all I
Uh-huh.
did was just change commanders, and I now just put in Willhead for him instead.
Yeah, Grimgrin. I had a friend with a Grimgrin deck, and that thing was pretty brutal.
Yeah, I loved it.
Yeah,
He's still in the
Grimgrin-
deck. I just moved him around.
Yeah, he's one of the 99. Yeah, it was a great deck.
Mhm.
I loved to watch it play. I just didn't like playing against it.
Right?
Yeah.
You're like, oh god.
Yeah, Rooftop Storm when it happened was just ridiculous.
Hey, look, free card. Hey, look, more free cards.
Oh,
Yeah.
jeez.
That's why I like G-Sling Graph, because it basically said like every turn I had a free grave recursion card. It's like, free.
Mhm. Yeah, those were the days. Zuby, I got to jump off.
Well, no, and
dinner
this is
time
a
here?
great way to end it too, because we're over an hour and a half here, and
Awesome.
I feel like we're wrapped up. We got a lot of good talking points in. Just want to thank everybody for coming on, and especially thank you again, Doug. He had to jump off early. Let's go around the table real quick and just do some outros, and then we will go raid someone. Food time, starting with you.
Yeah, I do a podcast, mtgrbd.podbean.com. It's Rather Be Drafting. We talk about the Magic news for the week. We're on a bit of a hiatus right now. Expect some stuff there soon. I want to do something pretty cool, but
I'd rather be
yeah.
drafting right now. So,
dude, all the time. And then check out my YouTube. It's youtube.com/foodtime because just youtube.com/foodtime apparently is not allowed. It's too generic. So go there. I'm actually going to start streaming here in the next week or two.
Nice.
Some stuff, so it should be fun.
Nice. Inu?
I have my brain just died on me. That's great for having me. I don't do
thank
much.
you for coming on again.
I don't do much but play League of Legends and Warcraft. But you can find me on YouTube or Twitter on Inu Snoozer T, and that's all I got.
Nice. And Mnemonic?
Yeah, so Mnemonic Tutor on all the socials. It's pretty well branded everywhere. I don't do much right now. I used to stream. I upload regularly to YouTube. I even started a podcast at one point, just didn't have time to keep up with it. Mainly all this happened because our daughter was born at the very beginning of the pandemic, and it just kind of...
Oh. Well,
Yeah.
congrats, though.
Appreciate it, yes. And so I've been kind of on a hiatus just because that's how it is when you have small children. But I do intend on coming back soon. So youtube.com/mnemonic tutor if y'all want to follow me there, or on Twitter or Instagram. I post all kind of weird stuff from time to time. So and one thing I'll kind of put out there is I'm definitely one of those people that likes to have a very diverse audience and interact with a diverse bunch of people. So just keep that in mind, right? My content or my socials are mainly for kind of advancing different gaming things or whatever, and not for the typical use of social media, which is bagging on people.
Okay, nice. Well, thank you all again for coming by, and thank you all for listening and watching. If you're listening to the podcast of this, thank you again. And we're gonna go raid. Who can we go raid here? Send some love. We will send some love to Tappy Toe Claws. Looks like she is playing some commander right now. So we're gonna go
Awesome.
send the raid there. Give her love from us. Hope you all have a good night, and we will see you later. I'm just gonna wave until the raid is over. And
Catch it. Later
Still
days.
there.
All right.
Sounds great.
Awesome.
All right, thanks, Zuby.